Well, let's talk a bit more about this bail package from the Liberal government. Bring in our strategist panel. Susan Smith is a Liberal strategist, principal and co-founder at Blue Sky Strategy Group. Cole Hogan is a Conservative strategist. Hello to both of you.
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
So listen, I'm going to begin by stating the fact that we have seen Mark Carney, since becoming Prime Minister, introduce, a whole host of things to try to tackle crime. But when it comes to bail, this really is, in the public eye, has been a Conservative issue. So much so, the Conservative leader was campaigning on bail during the federal election campaign. And now we have this bill being introduced by the government itself. Is this enough to convince Canadians that the government is taking the issue of bail and repeat offenders, violent offenders, seriously enough to meet the public concern, Susan?
I think it is. I mean, what do governments do? They can legislate. They can change the laws to make things tougher. So that's what Minister Fraser has introduced today. Stricter bail laws, tougher sentencing laws, 80 changes to the criminal code that will deal with repeat offenders, violent offenders, adjust things with youth, and do reverse onus in some cases. So instead of proving why you should get out, you have to prove why you should stay, or instead why you should be
getting bail.
You have to, it's reversed on that. So I think it will make a difference. There are provisions around car theft, repeat offenders, domestic violence, violence against youth, issues with law enforcement and other first responders. So this is what Canadians want to see, and this is the government's job, is to bring in legislation like this. It will go through Parliament, it will be tested and debated, but I think the Prime Minister was listening, and last night even in his speech at Ottawa U to the students, he referred to safer communities and taking control, and this very much responds to that.
Mm-hmm. Cole, what do you think? Because, at this point, the Conservatives are taking a bit more time to delve deeper into the bill before giving it a bit more of a, criticism, a post-mortem. Where will the party find fault with this bill, do you think?
Well, I think there's a few things at play here. First, it's commendable for the Liberals to take action on making bail harder to get. The previous measures that we've seen them introduce, I think they've introduced or announced 4 or 5 or 6 times. The 1,000 extra RCMP officers, I think that's a good move. I think if you look at downtown Canada across the country, you see the need for that, and I don't think the Conservatives will oppose that. In terms of the reverse onus policy that Susan mentioned, that's something that's already in place for violent offenders, because, how many more stories do we need to hear about innocent Canadians being attacked by violent repeat offenders who were just out on bail? And I think, to the government's credit, making bail harder to get is the first step towards addressing this real serious issue.
Okay, is it enough, though, to convince Canadians that they are addressing it? Because, again, this has been an issue for the Conservative Party, and it's one that the Conservative leader has been going on for months now.
Yeah, so I think we'll see the Conservatives continue, they will take a fine-tooth comb to this bill, and that's what people expect them to do. Canadians do trust the Conservatives more on crime than they trust the Liberals. So maybe if we see, this won't happen overnight, of course, but if we do see a drop in crime, maybe the Liberals can be a bit more competitive on this issue. But the Conservatives will make sure that this actually works, because this is something, crime is an issue. Just vagrancy in the streets generally is something we see all the time. And that they have to address that so people can see an actual difference.
Yeah, and Susan, a bit to a point of what Cole was saying, I was reading the article, in fact, essentially there is a credibility gap in terms of the Liberal performance on crime. It's been stated in a number of different editorials. How do they address that? Have they addressed that with this bill alone?
Well, I think the law and the enforcement of the law is really important, and trust in our RCMP and our police services, I might add, which Pierre Poilievre stepped in big time this week, calling into question.
We'll get to that.
Oh my God. No, I think the government is doing its job. It's been listening. It does have to govern, and the Conservatives, what they have done well is try to own the crime issue. And in this case, because the Liberals have many other things they have to deal with, like trade and supporting families and borders and all of these other things, it hasn't perhaps had the level of top of fold or headline attention that the Conservatives would like, and that's why they've been able to make some hay. But the government's job is to legislate. It's to bring in laws that are fair and equitable, that stand the test of our Constitution and through the courts. and are up to debate in Parliament. So I would think Mr. Poilievre would and his party would embrace this, because this is the kinds of things that they've been chirping about for a while.
Well, we will see. As I said, they want some time to go over the bill. We'll be speaking to the Conservative Shadow Minister tomorrow. But listen, let's also talk a little bit about Pierre Poilievre. As you said, he has been in some. There we go. He has been in somewhat hot water this week. The Conservative leader, as well as his caucus, been asked numerous times to answer questions about an interview that Pierre Poilievre gave recently, an interview in which he described the leadership of the RCMP as despicable, accused the leadership of the RCMP of covering up potential crimes involving former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Take a listen right now to a bit of that interview with Pierre Poilievre.
Many of the scandals of the Trudeau era should have been involved jail time. I mean, Trudeau broke the criminal code when he took a free vacation from someone with whom he had government business. It's just like, it's right there in the criminal code. If the RCMP had been doing its job and not covering up for him, then he would have been criminally charged. And again, he probably violated the criminal code in the SNC-Lavalin scandal. These would normally have led to criminal charges, but of course the RCMP covered it all up, and the leadership of the RCMP is frankly just despicable when it comes to enforcing laws against the Liberal government.
Okay, you're already reacting just listening to this.
I want to hear what Cole has to say.
Well, listen, I will begin then with Cole, since Susan's looking at you right now. How do you think this comment has affected the Conservative leader?
Well, I can tell you what I think isn't going to happen. I don't think there's actually any credible challenge to Poilievre's leadership, whether it's the unsubstantiated rumors of a potential floor crossing or the potential problem for Pierre to face any sort of, no or negative vote during the leadership race. That's not going to happen. In particular, I think obviously the Conservative leader could have picked a different way to make his points, and we've seen some correction to his comments. But there's been some more commentary at large amongst Conservatives. A lot of it has been led by Harper-era people, which, to their credit, a lot of young Conservatives, we wouldn't be active in politics without them. But there's one way that they viewed like how to actually do Conservative politics in Canada, and that's through cautious incrementalism. They would prefer if Stephen Harper and Pierre Poilievre were one and the same, but Pierre Poilievre got to where he is and was as successful as he was in the last election, of the best results since 1988, because he wasn't following the cautious optimism, that the Conservatives had to do after the 2003 merger to keep their party together. Pierre Poilievre talks about conservatism and politics differently than previous Conservative leaders, and because he's done so is the reason why the Conservative Party is at where it is today. So
in opposition. That's where the Conservative Party is today, because of Poilievre and because of the way he approaches these things. I mean, what you saw, maybe he didn't have Stephen Harper's incrementalism here, but what you had was like a tank Trumpism just bulldozing across the landscape of truth in this particular case, and bulldozing across the respect for Canada's judicial system and our police system and our investigations. He was not telling the truth. I won't use the L word there, but I think our audience knows what that word happens to be. And I think Pierre Poilievre absolutely reminded Canadians why he lost his seat in Ottawa and why the Conservatives did not win the election. Well, that is not a way to appeal to moderates. And we saw people like Dimitri Soudis. We've seen other moderate Conservatives or middle of the road, maybe even Harper Conservatives, which weren't always moderate, saying this is not the kind of Conservative Party that we have. There was a Globe and Mail headline saying, is Pierre Poilievre okay? He's fighting old battles. He's still telling untruths about things. And I think I've never seen him have to try and walk back something. And I think he got a bit scared because his caucus was not automatically rallying behind him like they normally do.
I think there is a question, Cole, of why would he even go there? Why would he say that? What is the advantage of making that type of comment for the Conservative leader?
Because Canada's institutions aren't beyond rebuke or criticism. Like I don't condemn the comments, but you're allowed to criticize Canadian institutions. The reason why Canada is overwhelmingly, young Canadians in particular, overwhelmingly conservative, because they've seen their future and their possibilities for the future totally abandoned by the Liberal Party of Canada. So when Pierre Poilievre actually talks about social issues, crime, immigration, that's what young Canadians want to hear, and that's why he'll form the next government and be Prime Minister.
There's a big difference between criticism and accusations of corruption. And that's what he was doing. And when you're calling into question the operations or the impartiality of the RCMP to do its criminal investigations, you're calling into question, by extension, I think, the criminal code and the application of the criminal code. Mr. Poilievre did not tell not the criminal code. It was an ethics violation that he made, and that's what was found. I'm not defending that, Cole. But your leader was up there making stuff up in the exact same way that he did in the lead up to the campaign and during the campaign, and that's why Canadians rejected Pierre Poilievre's type of conservatism, and that's why I think they rejected Pierre Poilievre. And it remains to be seen what happens to him in that leadership campaign or this leadership review. He's got a few more corners. He's got to check his shoulder a few more times. I'm sure he'll come through it, but he's got to watch.
Okay, quickly running time, but a minute to each of you. Cole, is there damage control that needs to be done over this by the Conservative leader, or is this acceptable?
Look, I think that when the leadership review comes, Pierre will pass with flying colors. There's a reason why the Conservative Party membership after the leadership race that Pierre Poilievre won was a record-breaking number of 675,000 Canadians. We didn't get to the finish line and win the election in the last campaign, but we're closer than we've ever been, and the best result we've had since Mulroney's second term. There's a reason for that, and it's because of Pierre Poilievre's leadership. That's why he'll have the support of the caucus entirely, and the membership will vote in his favor in an overwhelming number.
Okay.
You asked if that was unacceptable. Completely unacceptable for someone who wants to be the Prime Minister of this country to call the RCMP despicable and to attempt to politicize, just like Donald Trump is doing in the States, to attempt to politicize the political and the police processes in these countries. Not acceptable if you want to lead this country. That is not leadership.
Okay, listen, out of time. I appreciate it from both of you, Susan and Cole. Cole, you see, this is why you have to get back in studio. You have to get back in studio, my friend.
I'll be back next week.
I look forward to it. Okay, Cole Hogan, Susan Smith, thank you for the time.